27, verses 1 through 5. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When evildoers came upon me to eat up my flesh, it was, they say, my foes, my adversaries, who stumble and fell. Though an army should encamp against me, yet my heart shall not be afraid. And though war should rise up against me, yet will I put my trust in him. One thing I have asked of the Lord, one thing I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Well, I'd like to welcome our two guests today, Mr. Szymendara, who is from St. Christopher's School, and he has brought a compatriot here, Ms. Hudson, who oversees academic services at St. Chris. And so let's welcome them to our chapel.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, really? Monday morning? Good morning.
Good morning.
Need a little energy, I'm delighted to be back here in chapel at St. Catherine's. The last time I spoke, the topic of choice seemed to be of great interest to this audience, so I'm hoping that we can stick with a good thing. So is it okay with you guys if, for just a few minutes here, we talk about boys? Yeah, that's all right. Now, I know that doesn't measure up to an astronaut or what Reverend Johnson or White usually has to offer, but it's one of the only few things that I know much about. So this time I brought along a good friend and colleague to help me out. Dr. Kim Hudson is one of our academic resource teachers in the upper school and soon to be director of our new Center for Boys.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, I have to say. The first thing I noticed is you all are looking at me, which is great. And you're smiling, which is really great. So this is a nice change. It's a pleasure to be here this morning to talk about boys. I got to do a lot of talking about and thinking about boys this summer. You may have heard at St. Christopher's we hosted the International Boys School Coalition Conference. So at this conference we had over 500 teachers from as far away as New Zealand and Japan come to Richmond to talk about teaching boys. St. Christopher's work with the IBSC has led us to the goal of creating a center for boys, which will allow us to contribute to the research and learning about boys, how they respond to education, how they can best thrive in these settings. And this is similar to the work that your school is doing with the National Coalition of Girls' Schools. Now, 10 years ago, I never would have guessed I would spend my days with teenage boys and let alone actually like it, because I do. I started my career working in an elementary school, and then 10 years ago I was blessed with the birth of a daughter, and then a few years later a son. Parenting both a daughter and a son has taught me many important lessons about the similarities and differences between boys and girls. And each day I also learn lessons from the guys who come in my office, and these lessons help me parent my son especially. I'm able to get a quick glimpse at the guy my son might be in about 8 years. And that guy's a lot smellier than the sweet little boy he is right now. And speaking of smelly, this brings me to my office. Every time my 10-year-old daughter, who's with us this morning, comes to my office on the first floor of Chamberlain Hall, you all may have walked by sometimes, the first thing she says is, "Mom, it smells weird in here." I tell her that to get used to it, which I have. But also, the last time my son and I were here to pick up my daughter from the lower school, we sat down in these nice cushy pink chairs, and he's looking around, and within 30 seconds he said, "Mom, boys couldn't go to school here." I said, "Yeah, how come?" He said, "It's way too nice."
Now we could spend hours or even days talking about adolescent, both boy or girl, growth and development. But since we only have about 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to focus on essentially 3 questions. Why do our places smell differently, at least at times, and also look differently and maybe feel differently? What is necessary to capture and keep a boy's attention in the classroom? The sub-question to that will be, why won't that 9th grade boy ask me to dance? So 9th grade girls, look for that. Okay? And is there any hope for boys?
So back to the story about Peyton and Charlie for just a moment. When Peyton noticed the smell in my office, what was she picking up on? And why is it that our schools look and smell so differently? For starters, Peyton may be picking up on the smell in my office when the boys never seem to notice it, because girls tend to be more sensitive to smell than boys. My excuse for not noticing it is that I've become adapted to it. The only exception is on Monday morning when I get back to my office in a little while and I open the door after having not been there all weekend. I'll get used to it again by the afternoon. There are other sensory differences between boys and girls as well. Sometimes when the number of boys in my office grows from 2 to 5 to 10, the volume gets really, really loud. Yet none of them seem to notice it nor be bothered by it. Do they enjoy being rowdy? Well, yes, they do. But additionally, most boys don't hear soft or high sounds as well as girls. Some boys have trouble processing auditory information. Are they just not listening? Well, sometimes they're just not listening. But for many boys, the skill of processing auditory information is simply harder than it is for you all. That's why it's really important that we provide boys with visual sources of information to supplement the auditory, especially in school. This may also explain why my husband very successfully completes a to-do list. Give him a paper, we get it done. But if I ask him to do things, they may not get done. So the written is really important. According to psychologist Michael Gurian, the telling is difficult for boys. The more words a teacher uses, the more likely a boy is to zone out. And that's why that boy is tapping his pencil in class. He's not trying to drive you crazy. He's simply trying to stay engaged. And why do our schools look different? Now, both are beautiful places, arguably two of the most beautiful schools I've ever seen. But as my son observed, your school seems nicer. Take, for example, your beautiful classrooms with high ceilings and huge picture windows. Why don't we have these at St. Chris? Well, as noted earlier, most boys' hearing isn't as sharp as your hearing, which makes it harder for boys to capture that sound. Does that mean that they shouldn't be in classrooms with high ceilings? Well, no. But it does mean they may want to sit closer to the teacher, and the teacher may want to speak a little bit more loudly. And what about those beautiful windows? Now, practically speaking, the more windows we have at St. Chris, the more broken glass we have at St. Chris. Now, this is not on purpose, but boys are physical, most boys, and things tend to get broken a lot. And then there's also the issue of maintaining attention. Boys are naturally drawn to moving objects. That's why for many boys, sports are an important thing. Video games are an important thing. They're very meaningful to them. But lots of visual distractions, if you think of someone walking outside those windows, mean less attention to task for the boys. But again, that doesn't mean they shouldn't be in classrooms with windows, but what it does mean is they may want to choose a seat where their back is to the window. It's an important consideration.
So kind of like a puppy, just changes the area. Now, as Dr. Hudson indicated, our boys have to be part of recognizing what they need and what they want in their environment so that they may not only survive but thrive. Teachers and parents can help for sure, but ultimately the boys need to be active participants in shaping their environments. And this is a lifelong skill and adaptation that we're talking about. I was reminded of this only this past week. I've been living across the street from one of my teachers for a number of years, Mr. Hamill Jones. And he's a very nice house across the street, but nothing particularly jumped out at me. But a week ago, I noticed that for the first time ever, that there were these pumpkins and this floral display on the steps of his house. I'm guessing that has something to do with his marriage in August. And Mr. Jones, I'm sure you never suspected he'd be spending money on pumpkins and floral things for his front step, but he is learning to adapt his environment. And that's so that it, in this case, I think, can include someone else, someone with a different sense of organization and space and beauty. Our schools smell, look, sound, and feel differently because we are wired differently and have different preferences for what we respond to. So if boys are not particularly well and don't particularly hear well and are easily distracted visually, how do we get them focused? How do we get them engaged? Now, Dr. Hudson will return to that in a second, but there is something more essential than a few classroom techniques. Boys are very quick and very good at sniffing out authenticity. Or maybe more appropriately, they are skilled at recognizing a lack of substance, care, and authenticity. Do you know your stuff, and do you care about me as a person?
When a new school year begins, a boy wants to know if the teacher knows his or her subject and if he or she has a passion for it. This is certainly not to say that you all don't have this filter, but that boys do as well. That builds respect in boys. But as teachers, knowing our stuff is not enough. They can get that online from Khan Academy or some other source. A boy wants to know whether I care against the subject and whether I care about him beyond the course material. Now, 2 years ago, St. Chris participated in an international study that looked at the importance of student-teacher relationships in boys' learning. What the researchers found was that for boys, and we're not just talking about boys in the United States, but boys around the world, a positive relationship with the teacher is not just nice to have, but rather a fundamental component of the boy's learning. Now, believe me, I know that a positive relationship with an adolescent boy is not always easy to come by, especially if he seems to know just what buttons to push to get frazzled. But as the research reminds us as teachers, it's our job to form that working alliance with the boy, to be the relational manager of that. These boys, just like all of us in this room, are not finished products. And sometimes our work produces an unseen harvest. It may be 10 years from now when the boy, then a man, can realize and acknowledge the part that we played in this room.
When we work with our 9th and 10th grade parents, we often talk to them about our boys not being in their right mind. On average, a 9th grade boy is developmentally the equivalent of a 7th, maybe an 8th grade girl. Okay, I'm still paying attention, good. A 9th grade boy is developmentally the equivalent of a 7th, maybe an 8th grade girl. Boys lag behind girls their age. They do have deep, deep feelings, but they are confronted with two issues. A societal norm that tells them to be a man, which is roughly translated as be independent, be tough, be silent, and a brain that is not wired for communication. In other words, they literally have a very difficult time expressing the swirl of emotions raging inside them. They can't tell a classmate they appreciate their friendship, so they roughhouse with them. Think puppies again. They can't tell a girl that they like them, so they say something mean. They can't tell their parents that they are frustrated with the situation or need help, so they lash out or respond to a question with more emotion than seems necessary. Girls have these same emotions, of course, but they are better wired to handle them, and they are better at practicing, which is good and helpful.
On a daily basis, I observe boys trying to relate to one another and to their teachers. Humor, or at least their attempts at humor, play a large part in this. I recently mentioned to my husband that a certain boy was such a good kid, and my daughter, knowing this boy, jumped in and said, "Mom, he's always giving you a hard time." She's not wrong about that. He truly is. That's the nature of our relationship. But that's the way that he's showing to me. That's how he's showing me that he appreciates my help. That's how he's showing me that he wants me to know him as a person. Strange, I know. But I think I would probably faint if instead of joking with me, he came in one day and said, "Dr. Hudson, thanks so much for your help. I really appreciate all that you're doing for me. It's just not going to happen." And that's okay. What does happen, though, is at the end of each day, he stops by my office to say, "See you tomorrow." And that's enough said.
So on behalf of all the 9th grade boys, present and past, let me apologize to all the 9th grade girls and all girls who were once 9th graders. Because I've watched two of my own daughters get excited about every dance that's come along. They got the special dress, the special shoes, the haircut. They organized with a group of girls to have dinner, get dressed together. Every step of the process increased their expectations. And then 3 hours later, they came home disappointed that they didn't get asked to dance. It's not you. It's them and the developmental stage they're in. The good news is that just like you, the boys are on a developmental continuum. That's why we have more coordinated classes senior year than we do freshman year. You guys are closer together. For junior and senior girls, know that while it's better, the boys are still learning something about the whole planning thing. For them, junior and senior means getting a tux and showering. That's the extent of the preparation. Maybe ordering a flower if their mother really gets after them. Maybe cleaning the car. Maybe. Now, knowing that a lack of planning or future-oriented thinking that many boys can exhibit, we can take that into consideration on the academic side of life. It does not mean that we do not assign long-term projects. It just means that when we do, we know that we have to account for the weakness that many boys will have in dealing with an assignment of this nature. We have to teach them to take a whole and break it into manageable pieces. We have to have deadlines and hold them accountable. Otherwise, the assignment will appeal to their sense of risk-taking and a penchant for beating the deadline. Many boys will literally enjoy the physical thrill of working furiously at the last second to produce the paper or the project or the problem set.
This summer, a group of us from St. Christopher's worked on answering the question, what are best practices for boys? We did a lot of reading, research, we talked to experienced teachers, and we talked to the boys themselves. And developed a list of essential components for teaching boys. Now girls, you may notice a lot of these things work really well for you as well. Boys need a classroom that's structured and consistent, one in which they feel safe to succeed and safe to fail. Now safe to fail may seem like a strange concept, but it's really important to note that both in the academic realm and in the social realm, where they function with you guys, they're always trying to save face. They're trying to gain or maintain the respect of their peers, and that explains a lot of their behavior. A sense of shame can knock them out of the game in no time, whether that's in the classroom or in interactions with their peers. As mentioned earlier, boys want a teacher who's knowledgeable and passionate about her subject and who seeks to make the content engaging and relevant. Boys are always asking themselves the question, why should I care about this? Instruction for boys works best when it includes opportunities for movement. Even though they're bigger than me, they still need to move. Even though they're in high school, they still need to get up and move around. Hands-on learning is important, teamwork and competition, and choice. Wait time is also really important with verbal questions. So if you think of it this way, when a teacher poses a question, you all may be processing the answer to that question, and yet the boy next to you may be processing the question itself. So that component of wait time is really important. In conclusion, I feel really lucky to be able to parent both a daughter and a son. As a woman, I can understand the complexities that my daughter will face, and I'm also fortunate to have a window into the world of boys. And what I found is I really do like them. Just like us, they're figuring out who they are and who they want to be. They're silly, they're smart, and they're often irreverent. But at the end of the day, they just want to know that they're loved and valued. They'll grow up to be your colleagues, your friends, your husbands. They'll be flawed just like we are, and they'll need you, your perspectives, your insights, and your love. They will grow up, but that doesn't mean they won't still punch each other in the arm and tell the joke that you wish they hadn't.
This past spring, I was lucky enough to coach a team that finished its season with the state championship. As a teacher and a coach, however, I saw more than just an athletic accomplishment. I saw a team of wonderful, wonderful stories. I saw the boy who I was asked to speak with when he was an 8th grader because he was making some decisions that were not going to help him with his goal of being a big-time baseball player. I saw the boy who was not always so nice to his peers in lower and middle school, who had grown into a true leader and a good guy. I saw the boy who struggled for years because of his small size to make an athletic contribution and who got the big hit. I saw a group of boys who had been Little League All-Stars and now who could not get on the field, decided to become the best teammates possible. I saw a group of boys become their best selves, hardworking, group-oriented, positive, committed, trusting, and ultimately successful as yes, baseball players, but as people too. The good is there, and we can all see glimpses of it. In the meantime, it's probably going to be late, a little messy and awkward, and yes, smelly. Thank you all for listening.
Let us remain seated. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we give thanks for the words that have been shared, for the insights, for the reminder that you have created us special, that you have created us as male and female, for their own gifts and graces. We ask that you are with us all as we meet each other, that we meet each other with gifts and graces to give. Gracious God, we lift up those members of this community who are in need, who are in pain. We ask that your arms, that your care, that your love surround them and hold them. We give thanks for a good weekend. We give thanks for those who walked, for those who worked in the garden, for those who served the homeless, for those who met others in need. We lift up those saints who went out into the world and who met you this weekend, oh God. Be with us this week and make us stronger as a community, and bring us together this morning as we say the prayer that Jesus taught us, saying, Our Father,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
announcement.
Good morning, y'all. It is fast approaching 8:30, so does anyone have an announcement that absolutely has